Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Eat, Drink, and Be Merry show, where we love to talk about food, drink, recipes, and techniques, and where to shop, taste, and play. Let's go. Today, it is National Wine Day, and so let's all party. I'm serious. Very excited. We're going to be talking about wine across America, and we're going to talk about wine around the world. After this segment, we're going to go to Hungary with Diane Dobry, and she's based up in upstate New York. But we're going to do a little wine road trip with some of our favorite guests on today's Big Blend Radio Eat, Drink, and Be Merry show, also featured on our Big Daily Blend show, which loves to celebrate holidays and observances. So we're going to start in Oregon, because why not? We're going to go down the coast, and we are going across America. This is fun. We're going to start off with Dave Spector from Bells Up Winery in Oregon. You can go to their website, bellsupwinery.com. So welcome back, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Lisa. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, it's always good to have you on the show. Last time you were here, you were talking about we were playing happy hour, right? And you were talking about an event you were having at the actual winery where you were pairing food and wine. How did that go?
Went absolutely wonderfully. We had roughly 65 people at the event during that day. It was this wonderful 4-course pairing with a chef Carlos Perez, who is a classically trained chef who primarily works with Mexican cuisine. So seeing his imagination and how he took our 4 library wines, we had 3 Pinot Noirs and a Syrah, which you would not necessarily think of as being great pairings for Mexican cuisine. But I think that's part of what Carlos wanted to really get into, was this idea that, what I think in the States normally think of as Mexican cuisine is actually such a real thin amount of what they do. And so when you open up those possibilities, you can get a lot of really fun pairings. And I know a lot of folks took a lot of great ideas home with them. So great time had by all.
Awesome. So how is your vineyard looking right now?
It is blowing up. We started bud break, and usually bud break in our vineyard happens roughly in the middle of April. And this particular winter was very wet, but it got warmer a little bit earlier. And so our buds broke within about the first week of April. We've also had slightly warmer, slightly drier weather for the last couple of weeks. And so those shoots are going up like crazy. I always talk to folks about it. It's already such a short process, about 5.5 months in Oregon from the time that the buds break until the time that you harvest. So you're already on an accelerated timeline, and this year seems like it's going to be, put it to you like this, we better be ready sooner rather than later.
Oh, wow. Wow. Is that exciting or not?
Well, it's stressful in its own way, but every year is a little different. And I would say I would rather have an earlier harvest than a later harvest. The risks are much less with an earlier harvest. The later harvest goes, the more the potential for cold weather and rain and can spread a lot of nasty diseases out in the vineyards. All things considered, I'd rather be on the path we're on. I just would kind of like to see the weather here just kind of calm down a little bit and even out, because that's what Pinot Noir, particularly what is most of what we grow here, that's really what it wants to see. It wants to see temperate weather, cool nights, and just kind of ease itself into the season.
See, that's the thing. Yeah. Oh, well, we'll be in your land. I don't know. It'll be interesting on the timing, because we're going to come see you. We're going to do our best to come see you. So,
you got to come during harvest,
well,
so we put you to work.
Well, okay. I'm in. A day away from a computer is a good day for me. So long as there's wine at the end of it, I'm really in. Okay. So
Absolutely.
that's that. So we're going to continue. We're going from the west to the east. So Sharon Kurtz is back here, travel writer Sharon Kurtz and photographer. You can go to her website, SharonKKurtz.com. Everyone's website is linked in the episode notes as always. And Sharon is in Austin. So you are surrounded by awesome vineyards, aren't you, Sharon? Welcome back.
Thank you. We're at the start of the hill country, and there are vineyards all around my house. But I'm going to be talking about Monterey, California today.
See, this is great. So we're going to talk California. See, we are still in the West. We're going around. But isn't one of the oldest wineries in Texas or wine regions in Texas near you?
Yes, Fredericksburg. That is the second biggest wine region in the U.S. after Napa Valley, and it's one of the largest. So that is just hour and a half from my house.
Oh, that's awesome. Right. See, we're going to come see you soon too. That's what
All
we're
right.
going to do. All right. So now we're going to hop over to South. Oh, excuse me. We're in Texas. Skip Peggy. I'm so used to Peggy just being on the shows all the time. We can't just hop to Texas, but she is talking about California. Peggy Fiandaca and her husband, Kurt Lawrence Dunham, own and run LDV Winery in Arizona. They got 2 locations. One is in the southeast, so just south of Tucson, almost touching New Mexico border. You guys wanted to spread out. I know you did. You would be in New Mexico too if you could. That's where the Vineyard is. And the tasting room is in Scottsdale, Arizona, right in the heart of downtown in the art district. So when you go to Scottsdale this year on your road trips, you want to go see Peggy and go hang out in the actual tasting room and have some fun. So welcome back, Peggy.
Thank you. Glad to be here on this trip around the country and the world. I'm talking about
I know. I know this is so fun. So, how is everything in the vineyard right now? I'm so used to asking you that. Peggy has a podcast with us every first Wednesday, and so does Sharon. So you can
Yes.
start your day off with Sharon. She airs at 12 p.m. Central Time, and then Peggy is at 4 p.m. Arizona time. So Sharon takes us around the world. Peggy takes us into the vineyard and tastings and giving us tips on pairings and all kinds of good stuff. So, yeah, how's the vineyard doing?
Vineyard is beautiful. We're probably a little bit behind Dave up in Oregon in terms of the growing season. It is budded out in most of our grape varietals, not all of them totally. But right now we're experiencing extremely high winds, which is, again, we don't want our buds out too much because they can be blown to the next county. That's how high these winds are. So, yeah, it's interesting. And then, of course, in Arizona, because of these high winds, we have wildfires going on. Luckily, none near us at the vineyard. There is one in southeastern Arizona, but not near the vineyards, thank goodness. And there's a horrific one up in northeastern Arizona that's burning homes and burning quite a bit. It's out of control. The winds are tricky right now, but the vineyard looks beautiful. I think Kurt was saying that he thinks it's the best the vineyards looked in the 17 years that we have been in this crazy adventures.
Wow.
We look forward to it. Yeah.
Well, 17 is a good year, isn't it? We were all behaving at
Yes.
17. Speak for somebody else. Anyway, I was going to ask, being in Arizona, because I think this is so great about this show, and we talk about it all the time, but this is really good evidence that good wine is created across the country in all 50 states. And, I've had the wonderful privilege of tasting both Bells Up and LDV wines. And I can tell you, 2 different places on the map, 2 different regions. One's wet, one's dry. Sometimes it gets wet in Peggy's land with monsoon season. Sometimes you get snow. Sometimes Oregon gets ice storms, as I know. So it's really fascinating to me about all of this. So yeah, now I know you've got events going on too, Peggy, right?
We do, especially at the tasting room in Scottsdale. There's always a lot to do around there, because if you're coming to Arizona, you're going to be going to Scottsdale, because that's the place the entertainment district is fun. Of course, the art galleries, we have great museums, and of course, a wine trail in Old Town Scottsdale that I'll talk about.
See, now we're going to go west through the east. So Joe is back here. Joe Clark is a travel food wine writer. You know her as Have Glass Will Travel. She has a podcast with us every second Sunday, and she loves her wine. She really does. But as you can see, she's in her pantry. Oh yeah. Look at what are you drinking right now? What's in there?
Peach is a sweet wine, very heavy on the peach. I think it's XXX peach. Just, I walked by and thought, ooh, that sounds really good.
So it's a fruit wine.
Very, very strong peach. This over some vanilla ice cream is really where it should be.
Oh, wow. So this is kind of going into the dessert category, huh?
Yeah. It's not as thick and as sweet as an ice wine, but it's close.
So, Joe, you're going to be talking about Sonoma County today. So we got a couple Californians coming up. Oh, this is good. We got the West versus the desert. And then Cliff Garstang is up, so we're going north up to Cliff. Okay, so now there's West Virginia and Virginia. Cliff, is it West Virginia or Virginia that I'm going to get twirled around? Joe has to slap my head all the time. Where are we? Where you are?
We are both Virginians.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
That's the way
Virginia.
I'm going to remember it then. I'll always remember it then. Okay, cool.
It's
Both
Virginia,
Virginians.
but it's western part of Virginia is where I live.
That's
So,
why I get twirled around. So I'm going to remember that in the movie,
And-
The Virginian.
Me too, western part.
Boy. And don't forget, Peggy and Cliff have connections in Chicago. So,
Yeah.
and pizza is all part of it.
And
Cliff
the
said-
new Pope.
Yeah, the new Pope. I still need to see the meme with him having a pizza around his neck. I want that. I
Right.
want to see that. I need to find that. So, Cliff, your area, you have vineyards in your backyard? I bet you do.
totally, we do. So I live I'm in the Shenandoah Valley and I'm near the Blue Ridge Mountains. I'm on the western side of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And so we have lots of vineyards here. And then there are a whole other set of vineyards just on the other side, the eastern side of the Blue Ridge Mountains. So yeah, we're crawling with vineyards for sure.
Oh, neat. So that's a different kind of Virginia creeper then. It's
Yeah.
the vineyard creepers. Yeah, I know, right? You could do a mystery in the vineyard. Is there been mysteries in the vineyards? Like any mystery
would-
books and stuff?
I'm sure, yes.
I'm just saying, to everyone, Cliff is an amazing author, also a writer of short stories and essays. You can go to cliffordgarstang.com. So I hear you're doing this podcast and then going to a wine class.
Yeah, exactly. There's a local vineyard. It's called Barren Ridge Vineyard, which is about only less than 10 miles from my house. I go there frequently. But the son of the owner and his wife studied wine in France and Germany. And when they came back, they opened a wine bar in the town of Stanton, where I live. And they have this amazing selection of European wines. But they also hired, with about a year ago, a woman from Oregon who's an expert in Oregon wines. So tonight's wine class, they do this about once a month, offer a master class. So we're going to sample a whole bunch of Oregon wines and have charcuterie boards with them and talk about pairings. And it's going to be fun, which is why I'm not drinking wine right now, because there's going to be a lot of wine later.
I know we're going to talk about different wine regions, but I know, Peggy, you teach a charcuterie board class, right?
Correct.
So, and this is so cool about these classes. So everybody comes in, gets to have knowledge, have some fun doing these kinds of things. But let's go around and see who is putting what on a charcuterie board. So, Peggy, since you teach this, what is your must-have on the charcuterie board? And does it go by what kind of wine you're having?
Well, of course, I always say choose the wine you're pairing the food with. Choose the wine first and then create your charcuterie board. So I think I love Italian meat on the charcuterie. So sausages and sopressata and something that has a little spice to it, because of course LDV makes big reds and that go beautiful with it. And I love blue cheese or gorgonzola blue cheese on my board. Again, goes beautifully with the sausages and the big reds that I would serve it with.
This is starting to get like pizza night again, or pizza party. Everyone that aired on May 16th for National Pizza Party Day. So I got to go to Dave. What are you putting on your charcuterie board? This is good. We've got to start with the winemakers here first.
Yeah, I mean, meat-wise, I don't know that I would choose a lot different than what Peggy just did. Our wines, one of the things that I always say about Oregon wines is they're going to be overall light-bodied, but they are never supposed to be light-flavored. So that means that you've got a lot of ability to absorb some of those bigger flavors that those Italian sausages will and cured meats will do. On the cheese side, I think the thing I will throw in is truffle cheese. We're blessed in Oregon with a lot of truffle hunting spots. And what we tend to find in our wines is generally sort of, because it's a cooler climate, we get a little bit earthier flavors and aromas. And what better way to put that on with truffle cheese? But, as everybody has been talking about, when you make a lot of different wines, you really have to strategize what is going to be the best pairing with each individual one. Maybe there'll be some things that'll cover multiples, but really the biggest thing to me is just diversity. Have a diversity of options on that platter, and just really make it intentional as far as knowing what your wine is and bringing the best way that you can pair it and just kind of bring a partner to the party.
I got naughty because we got a big shipment from Melissa's Produce again, Melissa's Specialty Produce, and I'm learning to cook and I made crepes for Mother's Day. I did all these things, right? Really, I I've been working it, but they have these clean snacks. And one of them is organic, or it's dark chocolate covered raisins. And I won't tell you about how I work sometimes at 1 a.m. and I don't answer emails because then sometimes the wine is there and I might send you weird things. I don't know. But I decided that goes really well with any kind of red wine. But a cab, actually, it works well with a cab. So are they allowed on a charcuterie board, dark chocolate covered raisins? Because I've decided that should be a food group. And so I would like that on a charcuterie board. Do you ever do that kind of thing on those? Peggy,
Oh,
maybe since you
absolutely.
teach it. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm allowed.
You want some dark chocolate. I think dark chocolate is great. And of course, why not raisins? I mean,
Yeah.
It was a grape at one time.
I know. And don't call him an old maid, okay?
Yeah. So you can sprinkle them on your board. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. And I think I had too many of them, but that's okay. That's okay. Sharon, what are you putting on the charcuterie board?
I like a big mix because you never know what little bite you want. But I like pistachios. I like nuts on my charcuterie board. I like cured meats and smoked Gouda cheese and Parmesan and really colorful vegetables like red pepper slices.
Ooh, I like this. You know, you're talking about pistachios. I know you're going to be talking about Monterey, but majority of pistachios are grown in, well, you've got pecans, and I don't know pistachios on the other side, but in Central California is like a ton of them are grown there, like in Tulare County in that area. So not too far from where you're talking about. I saw someone do like those old champagne glasses that are like flat, not the, tall ones.
Yeah.
They put pistachios at the bottom. They sprinkled some berries, like blueberries and things like that. Then they made salami roses, and then they put olives and all kinds of good things, and they served their charcuterie off the board in a glass. But the pistachios are the bed. And I thought, something new. Why not? Why not? So, Joe, what are you putting on your board or in your glass?
All the above. The salty meats, salty nuts. I love brie. Doesn't always go with the wine that I'm picking, but I love brie, so I make it work. And chocolate, of course, because I usually have a red in my hand.
Okay. And Cliff, what about you?
Well, when we talked about pizza the other day, I established that I am a meat lover, so we'll definitely have to have some fancy meats. As I mentioned, the owners of this wine bar are from Europe, and they typically have European sausages that they put on the charcuterie board. They also have lots of amazing olives. I don't think anybody mentioned olives.
Oh, yeah.
And they also have dried fruit on the charcuterie board, dried apricots and maybe some other things. And well, plus everything else that you all talked about already.
I want the cheese. I want all of it. To me, a charcuterie board could be dinner every single day. So I just, looking at the regions too. So let's get some profiles of these different places that we're going to talk about. So Dave, why don't you give everyone a profile of your area of Oregon, which is Willamette Valley, which people are going to go 100% Pinot Noir, right?
Well, that was probably the case about 15 years ago, but you're now seeing much more of a diversity starting to emerge. I like to think that we're part of the trailblazers in leading that charge. But our area is known for, especially, so where we're located is west of the Cascade Mountains. And what those mountains do are to keep, what people traditionally think of the Pacific Northwest, cooler, wetter. I mean, all that Pacific moisture, that all stays west of the Cascades. So we grow grapes that require shorter growing seasons. And that's where Pinot Noir comes in. That's where we do a lot of whites. But now you're starting to see more of a diversity towards some additional short growing season reds that have been popping up recently. In our vineyard, we literally this spring field grafted over some Zweigelt from our Pinot Noir over to Zweigelt, which we expect to have in the barrel at the end of next year. It should be fun. But our area is, as I said, so we are not going to be growing the bigger, bolder reds that Peggy is down in Arizona. And so, in a lot of ways, I think people might say it's kind of limiting. And it can be provided that if as a winery, you make a choice to only focus on a certain number of grapes. That, I think, is where the message is finally getting out, where people realize that the days that you only have to make Pinot Noir are definitely gone by the wayside. But our summers are absolutely unbeatable. I mean, they're dry, they're very little humidity. Heat is variable. I mean, there are times where we get very hot summers. There are times where we get more temperate summers. We're going to be harvesting usually in the latter part of September, early part of October. And then just microclimates, it's such a diversity in this area. It's one of the really fun things about coming to the Willamette Valley, because depending on where you are, you might get into a slightly warmer area. So you might see a little bit of, for example, Tempranillo being grown. You might be in areas where you'll get volcanic soils and you'll get kind of the mushroomy, earthy flavors, or you might be on marine sedimentary soils where you'll be kind of more intensity. So such a variety in a relatively short area of time. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why it can support as many wineries as we have.
How many do you have, do you think, in Willamette now?
Well, in the Willamette Valley, the number is somewhere north of 800 these days, which is a lot.
A big vacation. For all of the wine lovers listening about road tripping this year, you could just live there.
It does get to the point where, it does get to the point where we have a hard time just keeping track of what's new and who's opening up and who's done what, but I've always said that, we're such a small place. One of our biggest challenges is getting people to know we exist, and the industry is great. It's very supportive. It's a very much of a rising tide lifts all boats. But the reality is, when you have that many wineries just competing for just the attention of other folks coming. So a lot of what we rely on to kind of get our word out, in addition to what we're doing here with you, it's review sites, it's social media, it's those other things, and just get people in the door. And then, we're confident that once that happens, that we can convert into the wines that we've got here.
When people do a tasting, they book with you and you actually sit with them and do a winemaker tasting, which is something very unique. And that's because you're such a boutique place. I mean, it's a real small winery. So this is an experience driven, operation as well.
Exactly. And there are a lot of different types of experiences you can have in the Valley. And we're one of the more unique ones because of this one group at a time model that we've always had. I mean, we sort of look around and see so many other options and ask, there's so much quality wine made. I say this all the time. I mean, our wines are great. Our neighbors' wines are great. Their neighbors' wines are great. You're not just going to be great. Everybody's quality focused. What are the other ways that you can really get on people's radars? And we said, well, we're going to leverage being our size, really small, really personal, no matter what your wine background is. And that's the thing. And we've seen a lot of other places when you try to combine groups, you get one group that's very wine experienced, one group that's very wine inexperienced. It doesn't really matter how experienced you are, but you just can't have the same conversation with those two groups of people. And we want to be able to talk to our customers. So we really kind of pared everything down to its simplest form and just said, no matter how many people you are, no matter where you are in your wine journey, great, we'll figure it out and we'll show you a good time when you're here and pour you some really good wines. But you can get about anything from what I would call more of a traditional Napa experience in the Valley with kind of more opulent buildings to what I do, and there are, everything in between.
I love this because wine tasting, we've got two travel writers here and an author. Does wine help you write, Cliff? I just want to know, do you ever sit and drink wine while you type? We can't hear you. Got to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I was caught up laughing because no, I don't. I write in the morning, and I don't think that would be conducive to getting through the day if I was drinking wine. But I sometimes go on retreats away from home, and where I'm writing all day, every day, and then in the evening, the words come out differently when I do it that way, though, when I'm drinking wine. So.
Yeah, well, it's a little poetic, right? You can whisk poetically when you have some wine.
Well, thank God for editing and revisions.
Yeah, I love this. Well, I want to go down from Oregon and we'll go to Sonoma with Joe because it's not that far of if you're going on a wine tasting road trip, Sonoma from Oregon is not, well, to me, it's not. It's just down the road. And Sonoma, I mean, everyone knows it, but it's not Napa. In fact, I remember, Joe, you kept saying, I'm going to Napa. And then you found out actually you weren't. You were going to Sonoma. So I think Russian River and Sonoma and that whole region, it's well known, but it does get a little overshadowed by Napa.
It does. I kept saying I was going to go to Napa and Sonoma. And the more research I did and the more contacts I made, everything was Sonoma. And so we were there for 10 days and I didn't set one toe in Napa. So I've got to go back. I need a redo because I still know nothing about Napa. And I'm still over here doing the math on Dave's area. I love the Willamette Pinots. And I'm sitting here going, 800. Let's see. I can handle 3 tastings a day. So I need to be there for 3 years.
The first thing I went to was 3 years. Yeah, I think so. It sounded like that. Well, Sonoma, how many tastings did you get to do? Because that's pretty.
I'm afraid to count them, but as I said, we were sort of averaging, we were shooting for 3 a day. If they would open a little earlier and I could spread them out more, it would be better. But somehow they don't want to serve me at 9 a.m., you know? But
when we go to our Hungarian episode after this, the segment after you, they go and wine taste before they have breakfast. So
my kind of people. Sonoma is amazing. Dave was talking, right. Dave was talking about microclimates, and Sonoma has one of the world's most diverse wine growing regions. They have 425 wineries, but they have 19 AVAs in that county. Yeah. And by comparison, the entire state of Virginia has only 8 AVAs, and that supports 300 wineries. The variety growing in Sonoma, they have more than 60 varieties of grapes that are perfectly happy growing there. So they're growing, you know, the sweeter grapes. They're growing the ones that like the heat. They're growing the ones that like wet feet. That they've got such a diverse area. And as an example, Healdsburg alone sits like at the crossroad of 3 different AVAs. So you've got the Alexander Valley and the Dry Creek Valley and the Russian River Valley, all in that one little town. I say little. I mean, clearly it's not very little.
But when you go to the downtown, it's charming. It's so charming.
It is.
As a travel writer, because you're doing the wine and the food and you are doing attractions and activities, don't you think that wine tourism has grown over time, where people are putting that as no matter where they are on their wine journey, that they are starting to go, hey, well, let's go to a winery as part of the mix of what they're doing?
Yeah, they are. They're definitely doing a lot more of that. I used to, especially during the week, on a weekday, be at a tasting bar, and at 11 in the morning, you know, I would maybe be the only one there, and I'm not anymore. It's like a line. A lot of these wineries, I think Dave mentioned that they do like seatings. So a lot of the wineries you had to make a reservation, like your tasting is at 11 and the next tasting is at maybe 11:45 or 12. So I can see that would also lend itself to pairing people of, am I there just to try some wines in the area, or am I there because I am very invested in red wines, or am I a restaurant owner or a chef and I'm looking for wines to put with specific meals? You could break it up if you had seatings for your wine tastings. I can see how that would work. In my head, anyway.
Well, the other thing too about different kinds of ways to experience wine, like Dave's doing and what Peggy's doing, it, you know, she does charcuterie boards, she does classes, like what, you know, Cliff is going to tonight. These different experiences. You went on a sidecar trip from, you know, where you were twirled around Sonoma County through the vineyards with a chef who made macarons for her to do a
French
pairing.
chef, no less.
Oui.
Yes, we had a ball. He has carved out his own little niche, and he does wine tastings in Napa or Sonoma. He does food tastings in San Francisco, and these are all things that are done with his company. They have the motorcycle and the driver, and then they have a sidecar. So if there's 2 people, one's in the sidecar and one rides behind the driver. And I know I've seen pictures of a little bit larger sidecar where they could put 2 people in the sidecar. So I think he could probably handle 3 people maybe on some of those tours. But he just has, it's so much fun, and he knows all the wineries, the winery owners, and the winemakers. So you walk in, and the winemaker comes over and talks to you and walks you through some of the tastings. Then he packed a picnic lunch and my macarons. So we had a wonderful little picnic lunch on a picnic table at a winery out in the vineyards. And
See?
yeah,
I love this.
it was
All these
great.
these different ways of experiencing wine. Now go down the coast from Sonoma being inland, right? And then California, you go down to Monterey, which is over the Golden Gate Bridge through Marin County, Sonoma County, Marin County, through San Francisco to Monterey, which is really central California. This area is gorgeous. You've got the Monterey Bay Aquarium. You've got otters. Can I just say we've got otters? I know we're talking wine, but there's otters. It's just, that whole drive, Pebble Beach. It's gorgeous. So Sharon, tell us about your wine experience in Monterey.
Well, I was in Monterey last fall during harvest season with a small group of journalists to review the Monterey Beach Hotel. It was a hotel back in the day in the 1960s. It was a Holiday Inn. It was like a motel type experience, but now it's redone and beautiful. So then we explored Monterey area, and we went to this vineyard called Folktale Winery and Vineyard in Monterey County. And that was the most wonderful experience at the perfect time. It was harvest. So we met the winemaker, David Baird, and he took us into the winemaking facility, and he was making that morning orange wine. Well, orange wine is a unique type of wine. It's known as skinned contact white wine. So it's taking white wine grapes, and in a big stainless steel vat in the winemaking area, it's the skins and the seeds and the stems all in this vat, and all of that organic material floats to the top, and we all stood around while he punched it down. You are mixing and that's how it gets the color and the flavor from the skins. And then you put it into white French oak barrels. So it was really unique. It's like an old way, but this winemaker, he's all about using old ways and modern ways and mixing it together. So then we tasted the wine right out of the barrels, and it's got an amber view. That's why they call it orange wine, not the flavor. It's the beautiful amber color, and it had an interesting texture, and it was unfiltered with minimal intervention. So it tasted like mango a little bit and banana, and it was fresh. And they make a wine, a vintage called Lion for Real. That means in 2017, they started making this white orange wine. And every year that they have a new vintage, they blend it together. And so it's this type of wine called the Lion for Real, just keeps moving forward year after year with a slightly different taste.
Wow. So that's a whole different experience. Now, traveling, going and being able to connect with the winemaker and see how they do it, does that help you understand even when you're tasting? As when we look at people traveling and going to wineries, I'm looking at these experiences as being something really unique for people. Was that it sounds unique and an adventure. Even to see the punching down is pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. That was it's kind of like Dave was saying, it's a completely personal experience. We had his attention, and he stood there and explained the whole process to us. We got to punch down the wine. We got to see, fresh wine being made right there. It was incredible.
So that, to me, that when you're being able to ask questions and see that, does that help, as writers, to understand the value of what goes into a bottle?
Yeah, it's using all of your senses. You were smelling the wine, you were tasting it, you were seeing the wine in the grapes and the skins being punched down. It's just visceral, and it brings it all to life.
How cool. Now, did you go home with a bottle of wine?
I sure did.
Of course you did.
I'm a carry-on traveler, but you better believe I checked that bag on the way home with a nice.
Sharon brings all kinds of interesting things home with her. I know there's other podcasts you should listen to find out more about that.
Yeah, don't be telling tales on me now, Lisa.
I won't. But anyway, I'll behave. Oh, go
I
ahead.
I didn't share that Monterey County is its own AVA in the Central Coast, and they have long, cool growing seasons. And the wine is special because it combines coastal fog and the ocean breezes and the varying elevations to make these beautiful wines.
See, this is so cool going across the country. We're road tripping for sure. So, Cliff, with what you're doing with your classes, I mean, it's an appreciation for wine, right? And the actual work of it. I'm just fascinated about this, how Peggy and Dave pulled this off and still make wine. But actually having these experiences with you doing these, what you're saying, these master classes, when you go to go and maybe like go to dinner with a friend or something, and you're going to taste a new wine, does all this education that you're doing as a consumer give you that extra sense of value? Do you think about where the wine comes from, kind of picture it in your head, like what these people are going through to make us this amazing juice that is like important? It's like it is as necessary as water to me.
I probably don't have the proper appreciation for all the work that goes into it. I just like to drink it, and because I've been to tastings everywhere I travel. I'm looking forward to hearing about the Hungarian wines, because when I was in Austria a couple of years ago, I also spent some time in Budapest and took a wine tour about 2 hours south of Budapest, and so discovered Hungarian wines being so fantastic. Of course, in Austria, I discovered the Zweigelts that Dave is talking about. There's so many amazing wines everywhere, and I don't remember much. It's really
It sounds like that was a good one. Really. I want to, in closing, go to Peggy here, because Arizona, I always, we're based out of Arizona with our storage unit since we travel full time. But, so many people think Arizona is just a blanket of sand and some gummy cactus. I always call them gumbies. But it's so much more. There's forests, there's waterfalls, there's cities, there's art. There's just so much to this beautiful state of Arizona. And one of the most amazing things is the wine that it creates. So, Peggy, going in this experience, I mean, there's so much diversity of wine in Arizona because of the different microclimates, right? Because Dave was talking about volcanic soil, and you have that.
Absolutely. Arizona can't compare to Oregon right now. I mean, or Sonoma or Monterey County that we talked about, because it's still fairly new. I mean, we have over 100 and getting close to 140 wineries statewide, focused around three main regions in the state: up north in the Cottonwood, Cape Verde, near Sedona location, grapes being grown, as well as wineries. Down in Sonoma, which is south of Tucson, which is the oldest region, and then where I am in southeastern Arizona, the greater Wilcox area, we only have 3 AVAs in the entire state of Arizona. But when I started my winery 17 years ago, we were licensed number 13 or 14, something like that. And like I said, we're close to 140 today. So we're fast growing, high quality. The regions aren't drastically different because we're growing at high altitude. All of the wineries are at high altitude, 4,000 to we're at 5,000 foot elevation, and we have some inching close to the 5,500 altitude. From that standpoint, the weather is similar in all of the wine regions. We're actually cooler than Sonoma or Napa Valley in the harvest time than they are, where our regions are. So it's much cooler, but they're remote. They're out in the rural areas. That's why I have a tasting room in downtown Scottsdale, in Old Town Scottsdale, where all the tourists come, so that I have a market for my wine. Otherwise, I'd sit at the vineyard and no one would show up. Every once in a while.
When you think, with you being in Scottsdale, you have a wine tour, like a wine trail, right, for Scottsdale. So if travelers, they get off the airplane, they go to downtown Scottsdale for the first night, they can start tasting wines from all over Arizona, right, from the wine trail.
That's exactly right. We have 6 wineries that are, 5 of them are Arizona wineries that are on the trail, and the 6th one represents Arizona wineries from throughout the state. So you can get a very good taste of Arizona wines. And one of the wineries, Salvatore Vineyards, they have Italian varietals. Of course, LDV does more all Rhone varietals. Los Milix does a mix of varieties on his vineyard, but he has South American wines or grape varietals. So you get a little bit of what Arizona has to offer in terms of wine, which is kind of exciting, mixed in with all the arts and the entertainment and the shopping, because Scottsdale is a destination shopping market. And so it's a great place you can spend a week or a weekend and really enjoy yourself.
That's awesome. So we covered the country a little bit, huh? We went across. We did. Well, I want to just say, as we close off, I know, Dave, I wanted to ask you, what do you remember your first sip of wine that made you think this is something that's going to be in my life, like forever? Do you remember?
Gosh, I think the one, and this is going to be kind of a strange one, but where I remember it, I was actually on spring break, my 3rd year of law school, with some friends, and we were at the French Pavilion at Epcot and having dinner and had a glass, and all it was a Couderon. It wasn't terribly complicated, but there was something about it that just really struck me and made me realize that, wow, this has the potential to be pretty special. And at that time, I mean, I was in my mid-20s. I knew very little about the wine world, but it definitely was one of those moments that you could almost kind of feel the world shift a little bit under you, and really led me to learn as much as I could about it.
Wow, go from law school. Well, that connects over to Cliff again. Cliff, you have all these connections with people. I think this is great. So Cliff, do you have a specific time when you realized like this is going to be part of my life? And it's like really being an art appreciator, right? I know you appreciate art too.
Yeah, I think the clearest memory I have of beginning to taste wines, although I'd been up to Napa when I lived in LA, but when I lived in Singapore, I had a group of friends and we would get together regularly to drink wine. And there was one particular friend who was from New Zealand, and she introduced us to some fantastic New Zealand wines, especially Sauvignon Blanc. And that made me realize there were things from all over the world that I needed to try. There are no Singapore wines, but we had lots of wines from other places.
What about you, Sharon? Is there any wine that kind of turned you on to being a food, wine, and travel writer?
Well, one thing that stands to mind, it wasn't my first wine, but about 2 years ago, I was invited to explore the south of France, and in Saint-Emilion, which is a little tiny wine village near Bordeaux, I stayed in a chateau. Never done that before. And then I had a wine tasting down in the cave where they had made wine for centuries. And it was like bells were going off. It was such a unique, memorable experience.
And for you, Joe, have glass will travel?
Somewhere in my early 20s had, believe it or not, Blue Nun. But that was such a step up from Boone's Farm, which is all I had had before as a teenager. It opened my eyes. And then when I spent a month in Russia and drank wine in Georgia, but a whole new ball game. And I guess I was about 28 at the time. And I came home with 2 bottles smuggled home from Russia.
I love this. This is great. Peggy, for you?
I would say, of course, being Italian, we started drinking wine in grape juice glasses when we were young children. But I think when we visited Mendocino and Anderson Valley, and we went to Navarro up in that area, who specializes in Pinot Noirs and Gewürztraminers, and just we joined their club. I think I was a member of their wine club for 25 years or more. And we got to know the owners and the winemakers, and they were so passionate about what they were doing and how they were doing it. I mean, we never thought we would ever be in the wine business per se, particularly at that time. But we gained this appreciation of the process and what they were doing it and how careful they were and how they respected the land. All that kind of thing really resonated us and made us appreciate the wine even more. And when we did get in the wine business, we remembered that ethic. And that's what we've always tried to emulate, because we just appreciate that part of their story and tried to bring that into our world.
Yeah, I'm with you. Of course, like you in South Africa, wine is at the table for the kids as well. And then when it wasn't dinner time, I won't talk about what me and my friends would do to, our parents, the wine cabinet. We would pour wine for our parents, let's put it that way, and make sure we sipped it along the way. But when I was about 14, when Nancy did her tour of South Africa and we went to Stellenbosch and I saw those big Cape, you just did that, Joe, in Penyan. You got to see those big Cape Dutch homes. And I mean, some of them even had swans, and, this is all outside Cape Town in South Africa. And I realized this was more than stealing my mom's wine and trying to by the way, don't try and replace it with Sprite. She'll know. But anyway, that's when I realized, my God, this is like a living real deal. That's like kind of realizing where your food comes from. And it just, for me, it was just like, ooh, we got to have respect. So thank you all so much for joining us on our National Wine Day celebration. This is a podcast for every day anyway, because every day is wine day. And stay tuned. We've got Diane Dobry coming up next, talking about Hungarian wines, which includes Austria, like Cliff said. Everyone's links are in the episode notes. Thank you so much, and cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, so we're going to continue our wine month. I was going to say wine month, but wine day coverage. I think every day is wine day, National Wine Day. But we're going to step outside the country. We're going to go to Hungary with Diane Dobry. You know, she's been on the show many times over the years, and she has a website called gettinghungary.com that people can get to. Is that did I give it right?
That's my website. I also have a Facebook page for that, and I have a Facebook page called Thirsty for Hungary, which is focused a lot on Hungarian wine.
So you actually, because you lived in Hungary for a while, and everyone, Diane's a food wine travel writer as well, and she's got her hands in a lot of things, including writing memoirs and genealogy and doing podcasts, all kinds of great things. But you lived in Hungary for a while and started getting into the world of actually importing Hungarian wines to the United States. But what is like a big difference, would you say, with Hungarian wines to Americans that may never have had it before?
Well, before I went to Hungary, my brother was a big wine collector, and he had all the French wines and some Spanish wines. And I kept saying they're so bitter, the tannins were really strong, and I could take it or leave it. But when I went to Hungary, my friend took me to some of the wineries in southern Hungary on a Sunday morning. We hadn't even eaten breakfast. And the thing about the wines that I loved was they were so smooth. They really, you could tell the fruit was good, and they just had such a nice flavor.
And is this because you didn't have breakfast yet?
Well, he said, the best time to taste wine is before you have anything else to disturb the flavor. But I like wine with food, so I try to find the best wine pairing with the food. But there wasn't a lot about that when I started my business. As far as in wine books, all they talk about is Tokai, which is the dessert wines, the sweet dessert wines in the eastern part near Ukraine and Slovakia. They have wonderful red wines, but only 30% of their grapes are red wine grapes. 70% are white wine grapes, and some of them kind of match up with Austrian wines.
Okay, so that gives people a little idea. So you were talking about these other wines, the Tokai, you said. They're more on the dessert sweet wines. So those are sweet white wines?
Yeah. Well, Tokai can have also dry wines like Ferment, which is becoming a little bit well known here, Furmint. It's a dry wine that is used in making the sweet wines in Tokai. And Tokai has Asu, which is like a sweet wine that can be different. What do they call it? They call it putonyos, which is baskets of grapes, but they're dried up grapes, like hard cranberries, dried cranberries or something. And 3 is like, an average 369 putonyos. No, it's 3, 4, 5, 6. That's right. because 6 is the highest Putoņos. And then you have a Samaradni, which is also a sweet wine. It's aged differently. The Asu is aged usually longer, but then they have the most expensive wine. Well, at the time that I was doing it, it was Essentia, which is wine that's it's almost like a syrupy honey sweetness, but it's a very little bit that you would want to drink. It's so sweet, but it's very expensive. And you can age Tokai wines. Once you buy them, they can age 25 years more.
Wow.
50 years people will age
That's
it.
pretty long.
And they age sometimes in the barrel, like 10 years in the barrel. You know, I went there, but I didn't want to import that because that seems to be the only wine that Americans write about from Hungary. And I wanted to introduce newer wines.
So what would be some of the newer wines that people could look at and get to know?
Well, the most planted grape is a Cake Frankos, which is like a Blaufränkisch from Austria, or in Washington State, Lemberger. It's the same grape, but Cake Frankos is a basically a red wine that they use in blends. You can get it just plain red wine, Cake Frankos. There's also Keiko Porto, which is a blue Portuguese grape. And then there are some Syrahs that are grown, they're really grown well in the eastern mountain regions, Matra, which is, there's Matra, Eger, and Tokaj as you go further east from Budapest. And they have some pretty good Syrahs, but the best red wines I've tasted was that first Sunday. And that region is Vilan, which is south, closer to Croatia. And it's at the bottom of the Danube. I keep thinking Duna. That's what they call it, the Duna. But there's another region, Sexard, which has rosés and red wines there. But the best wines were in Vilan because it's almost like the Burgundy region of Hungary. You know, nice, really full red wines there.
This kind of, it's interesting how you're able to compare it to all the different European wine regions, right? So yeah, because it is connected. Yeah.
There are some unique Hungarian whites, and some of them are hybrid grapes, but you have, there's like an Irse Oliver, which is a white. A lot of them are around they have the biggest lake in Central Europe is the Balaton. And the Balaton has all these hillsides where they plant the white grapes. And because the water reflects the sunlight onto the grapes, so that it's got a nice ripening there. And they have more of the dry whites in that area, as well as rosés. But the dry whites, I'm trying to see where my list is for dry whites. I have, let me see, because I call Tokaj as the sweet spot, and then the Balaton region has the Cake Frankos, the Kadarka. No, that's the red wines. The white wines are Ferment and Harsh Levelu. Those are from Tokaj, but also other regions grow them. But the Ferment and Harsh Levelu go into the sweet wines.
Wow, I'm so glad you can pronounce all this stuff.
I hold it there.
This is
one of them, though. One very popular wine throughout the centuries was Ufark, which is called sheep's tail, and it's grown in this very the smallest region. It's a volcano, basically, in the Szomlo region. It's closer to Austria, and it was used for royal families who were trying to produce a male heir. It was helpful in pregnancies producing male heirs. So like when Catherine the Great was married into the Russian royalty, the story was that she and the husband, he was very childlike, and she didn't want to even have relations with him. And I don't think he wanted to have relations with her. And her mother-in-law was like, you know, if you're not pregnant yet, we need to get you some Hungarian wine. And I think that was the wine they were talking about, was the Szomlo.
And nowadays it's like, don't drink wine.
Then they have the Olas Riesling. It's not like a Rhine Riesling, which is the German Riesling. It's Olas in Hungarian means Italian Riesling, but it's actually Welsh Riesling, and it's very popular there. It's one of the most popular white wines in Hungary.
Okay, so Welsh. So it's Welsh from like Wales?
I believe it's Welsh from Wales. I just remember when I saw Olas Riesling, when I started importing it, I thought, oh, it's a Riesling. But then I was reading, no, it's not Rhine Riesling. It doesn't have, but you can get it. It's usually dry. It is the favorite dry white wine there. There are some wines like a Tramini, which you can get in different levels of sweetness, dry, half dry, sweet, and that's like the German Gewürztraminer. So the one that I hear a lot about, and it's a great wine in the summer, is called Cserszegi Fűszeres, which is about spicy cserszeg, spicy grapes from Cserszeg. And it's a crisp, acidic white wine, and it's got citrusy fruits and aromas, and it's one of my favorite summer wines. So, and I think people would like ferment as well. And then there's a rare, unique white wine that's grown only on the north shore of Lake Balaton called Cake Mielu. And cake means blue, but it's pale with a light aroma of flowers and peaches. So they also have a lot of really good champagnes, and the champagne, popular champagne is Turley, O with umlaut over it, RLEY. That's, instead of saying champagne, they call it Pejgue. So that's, sparkling, a sparkling wine.
Okay, sparkling. Yeah, they got bubblies. Yeah, because they can't say champagne either. No one can other than
Right.
champagne.
Right. But the Tokai, for when the Russians had taken over, Soviets had taken over Hungary, the Italians started to sell wine and called it Tokai, and the Hungarians had to say, no, that was one of the first Appalachian wine regions in the world, because kings and popes would have wine vineyards there. It's well known that Hungary produces Tokai.
This is so interesting because it does go into history of a place.
Yeah.
Especially Hungary, because the borders kept changing depending on what was going on war-wise, right? So wine changed with the borders, didn't it? It's like, I own this appellation
Even
now.
back to the Roman times, because Hungarians had only made white wines for a long time. In fact, Thomas Jefferson ordered 36 bottles of Hungarian white wine from that white wine region, which was, Tokai is only white wines they produce. I don't know if he had sweet wines or what kinds of wines he had, but I think he probably had sweet wines from Tokai, because that was the well-known region. And it wasn't until the Serbs came into Hungary. The Ottomans were kind of all over the place, and the Serbs came in, and they were avoiding the Ottomans, and they went to region, and they brought in the red wines and the red wine producing technology at the time. So
wow. So how do people get Hungarian wine today? Do you go into like a major wine shop and go and look in the global section, and hopefully they have some Hungarian wine, the ones that you're talking about?
It's hard. I've gone to a lot of wine shops, and they might have a Tokai, and they might have one or two reds or a white. There's a company that, when I was craving wine during the pandemic, and I was like, I want some Hungarian wine. How can I get some? And all these places were picking California wines and everything. And I even contacted Hungarian winemakers and said, can you ship some wine to me? And they're like, no, we can't ship outside of Europe. And
you're like, well, just keep quiet about it, please.
All of a sudden, the internet heard my plea, and some friends of mine that I know from Hungary, they have a place called the Tasting Table in Budapest, where they have wine pairing dinners and wine tastings. And they also have across the street their wine shop. But they have a wine business in Washington, D.C. And the thing I said to them, you're so smart, because Washington, D.C., there's so many complications in the wine industry in the U.S. Every state has its own rules, and there's all this tier thing. If I import it, I have to find a distributor, and then they have to sell it to the retailer. In Washington, D.C., I was told by the lawyers and the importers, you can sell it out of the trunk of your car, of wine. And so my friends who
This is funny because that's where all the political stuff goes
Yeah.
down. See?
They-
Yeah,
so they-
politics and wine at the back, outside the back of your car. Sounds about right. But the
But
wine
you
is
don't
good.
have to have a distributor. You can just sell it. And really they could sell it on the internet, but you're just limited by what this other states will allow you to ship to them. Like Texas is known for not allowing wines. They may have changed now, but so when I saw that, they had this great deal. You could either join their wine club and they would pick wines for you, or you didn't have to join the wine club and you can ask them to pick 3, a white wine, a red wine, whatever, or you could pick your own wine and you look at what their selection was. So I ordered like 6 wines. And in fact, I did a tasting of those wines on my website, Getting Hungary. And I did a little video of the wine
Oh, cool.
tasting that they sent me. And I interviewed the business owner of Taste Hungary. They also do tours. They do wine tours and historical tours and food tours in Budapest. So they're called Taste Hungary. In the US, it's called, in Budapest, they have the tasting table, but to order wines in the US, it's tastehungry.us.
Okay.
And
Okay, cool. We'll put that in the episode notes for people to link through.
okay,
Yeah.
and do wine tours, as I said, tastehungry.com. And they also, there are other places that are guided tours throughout wine regions, and Balaton, and near Budapest is a wine region called Etyek. So it's really close to get to if you're visiting Budapest. But really the best place in Hungary to get a variety of wines is Budapest. They have
Okay.
everything. I did write an article on my website, on my Getting Hungry website, called Ordering Wine in Budapest, Ordering Wine Like a Boss in Budapest. So there are some key notes to what to look for on a Budapest wine menu. And
Oh, that's helpful for people first going there. Very cool. Well, we'll put all those links in the episode notes, everyone, but you can go directly to gettinghungary.com. And then what is your Facebook page for people who want to learn more about the Hungarian wines?
Getting Hungry, but also Thirsty for Hungry Facebook page.
Okay.
Is pretty much about the wines.
Awesome. Well, good to have you back on the show. Cheers to you.
Thank you. Same to you. I hope you try some.
Oh, I know. I want some now. We should be doing that, right?
That's right. We should.
Thanks for joining us here on Big Blend Radio's Eat, Drink, and Be Merry show. Keep up with our podcasts at bigblendradio.com and our magazines at bigblendmagazines.com.